Hi everyone, I'm Annette from Annette's Makes and Bakes, and as I've been asked so many times about my cake recipes, I'm actually going to do you a video from start to finish on how to make your buttercream, how to make a straightforward vanilla cake, although I'm going to add white chocolate to mine because I want to make it a bit nicer. And then later on I'm going to be going through filling, chocolate ganaching, and then decorating the cake. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is actually turn on my oven. Now, a lot of recipes online will tell you to have your oven at about 180, whatever. I keep mine just below 150, and I found that if you want your cake to stay fairly level, you cook it long and slow. Okay, so for an 8-inch vanilla cake, it's going to take about 30 minutes to cook. All right, if you want a rise on your cakes, then just turn the temperature up just a little bit and it'll just make it rise all that more. But I always like my cakes to be nice, not horribly brown around the outside, which happens when you bake them at a high temperature. But I also like to keep them nice and level, so I bake mine at just below 150 or on 150 for about 30 minutes. And I bake all of my cakes in 3 2-inch tins, depending on the size of cake I want to make. So I will show you the ratios for the recipes for that a little bit later. First thing I'm going to do is make my buttercream. Okay, so for me, it's not worth making less than a 2 kilo mix, but the ratios for it are, for my 2 kilo mix is 500 grams of butter, or I use margarine, and when I'm doing normal cakes, and 2 kilos of icing sugar. So it's quite easy to work that down. To do an 8-inch cake, fill it, maybe top it with buttercream or whatever, you would only need 250 grams of butter or margarine and 1 kilo of icing sugar. So the first thing you do, obviously, put your butter in your mixer. If you haven't got a stand mixer like I have, a hand mixer will do it. But regardless of what you see online and where they edit the videos so you don't see everything flying around, you don't see all the mess that they make and all the rest of it, it is messy making icing buttercream, because the icing sugar is really fine. It's super fine sugar, that's all it is really, and it flies everywhere and there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, so in goes the butter and the first kilo of icing sugar. Now obviously if you're doing it at home, you'll only need 250 grams of butter and put in the first 500 grams of icing sugar. Now watch this. It's not too bad, so it's on the lowest setting, but you get dust going everywhere. When I put my next lot in, it actually gets worse than this. Right, so nice slow to start it off, so that your icing sugar doesn't go everywhere. And don't do like I did over Christmas. Like an idiot, I turned it on the wrong way. My machine has a pulse on and the icing sugar just went everywhere. So, right, so once it started to mix in, started going creamy, crank the volume up and really give it a good old beating. Okay, so that was for about 30 seconds, and you'll be able to see that that is pretty much like soup, okay, like a thick soup. So it's nice and creamy, but it's no good for anything yet. If you're making icing to fill a cake, your icing needs to be fairly stiff. Okay, so your cake doesn't slide all over the place, and secondly, so that it doesn't all squish out when you put the top layer on. So now I'm going to do the next kilo. Let it go on slow again. And the one thing you always need is a cloth. Okay, so you can hear my machine struggling a little because the icing is fairly thick. So I'm just going to crank it up a bit. If you want your icing, buttercream, sorry, to be nice and white, the more you beat it, the whiter it goes. Alright, so you can let it go on beating for about 5 to 7 minutes. Right, so I'm not going to put you through all that. And I'll cut out the bit between now and 7 minutes. Alright, so that's how long I would leave mine going. If you're using a hand mixer, just keep beating it for as long as you possibly can, okay? 7 minutes will seem an awful long time when you're doing it with a hand mixer. So you can hear my machine stopped straight away because it's really thick. Okay, so you have really, it's like butter really, I suppose, room temperature butter, but I will set it off beating a little bit later for a lot longer, and then it'll be really nice and light and super white as well. All right. Okay, so I let my machine go on for quite a while, and I didn't want to bore you with that process. One, it's really noisy, and two, wasting your time. But my buttercream is lovely and white, and that's how stiff it is. Now, this is perfect for filling cakes, so it doesn't go squish out of the cake. If you want to use it to decorate, or if I was going to use it to decorate cupcakes, it's too stiff for that. It needs to be slightly looser because it will just break your icing bag, piping bag. So I would add 2 capfuls to this mix. So if you wanted to do it for cupcakes yourself and you're only doing a 250 gram mix, 1 capful of milk into it is enough to loosen it up. Don't be tempted to just pour the milk into the mixture. One, you probably end up pouring in too much and it'll go like horrible soup, and it really doesn't need that much. It's just easier to do a cap at a time until you're happy with the consistency of it, so it's just a bit softer, so you can actually pipe it out through a piping bag. Bearing in mind I have professional piping bags, so they're really strong, but even then I still use 2, and I'll show you that later on. Okay, so buttercream done. Now you don't have to clean out your machine or bowl because all that's in there is butter and sugar. There's very little in there now, so I can just carry on and make my cake in that. So buttercream topped up. Make sure it's airtight as well, otherwise it will start crusting on the top, and then if you try and pipe it through a piping bag, it will just clog up the nozzles, whatever. Okay, so to make an 8-inch Victoria sponge in 3 layers like I use. All right, this is going to be a 600 gram mix. All right, so 200 grams in each one. All right, 200 grams mix in each tin. So if you only want to do 2, you literally only need to have 400 grams of everything. Me, I need to do 3, so I always do 3. So it's a 600 gram mix, and this is super simple. It's so easy, you can't forget it. All right, so it's 600 grams of everything. So 600 grams of butter, 6 large eggs, 600 grams of sugar, 600 grams of self-raising flour. I have vanilla essence, and I use it from a company called Tisserie, who it's quite expensive, but you just can use normal ones from the supermarket. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, now I know how to measure this out, but I'll weigh it out, okay? Don't do what I'm doing and just chuck it in, because I know the ratios so well now. All right, so in my mixer goes. Now normally I would use butter, which is hugely expensive, and it's just got more and more expensive as time's gone on. But just to show you that you can make a really nice cake with margarine, this is Asda's Smart Price soft spread, which is £1 something, can't remember actually, but for me to make this with butter, it would cost me like 8 or 9, nearly £9, whereas this is £1 something. Okay, so that's really good to use, and it makes a really nice cake as well. Right, always use granulated sugar. I have never used caster sugar in my baking recipes. I know all the recipes online say use caster sugar, but my grandmother, who taught me how to make bake stuff in the first place, always used granulated sugar, and I've stayed with that, and it always makes beautiful cakes. I mean, caster sugar is literally just granulated sugar ground down finer, and all it needs to do is melt. So if you blend it well enough with your butter, then it will melt. Right, so in there I have 600 grams of butter, 600 grams of sugar, and I'm just going to put that on to start off mixing. Alright, so for you to make just 2, you only need 400 grams of butter and 400 grams of sugar. With me, I'm doing 3, so it's 200 grams per 8-inch tin. If you're doing a 6-inch tin, you want it smaller, then you only need to do a 100 gram mix, so it would only be 100 grams of butter and 100 grams of sugar for each tin. So it just depends what you want to do. But I will put all the details for the buttercream, for the vanilla cake as well at the end of this, so that you have a full recipe and all the details. Right, so now I'm going to crank this up to give it a really good mix. Alright, so hold on. Okay, so I'm going to leave that on a reasonable speed at the moment. The next most important thing is large eggs. Not medium, not small, large eggs. If you're using small eggs, you need to use 2 times. But with this recipe, if you just get large eggs, you'll be fine. So, because it's 600 grams, I need 6 large eggs. Okay? Crack your eggs into something before you actually put them into the mix. One, if you get a little bit shell, it's really easy to get it out. And two, you can actually see that the egg is good as well. If I think the egg's a little bit dodgy, then I'll just literally throw it away. Right, so I'm going to add that in. There we go. And just keep adding these in on a fairly high speed. So just do one at a time, always one at a time, okay? Alright, so that's 4. More. If you look at your mix and you think, oh god, it's split or whatever, where it looks slightly curdled, don't worry, it won't be a disaster for your cake. Once or twice I've had a mix where it hasn't mixed together perfectly well and there's been a slight curdling on it and it's still baked really well. Okay, so that looks lovely at the moment. I'm just going to scrape down the sides of the mod pan and then put it back on. Put it back on nice and slow now. Just keep it mixing. Okay, so 600 grams of butter, 600 grams of sugar, 6 large eggs, and now 600 grams of self-raising flour. You need to be as careful with your measurements as you possibly can. I've gone slightly over there. Alright, don't be tempted to think, oh yeah, that'll do. It won't. It will affect your cake. You have too much flour in it, it will be dry and horrible. If you have too much sugar in it, you'll have a horrible crust on the top of your cake. If you put too much butter in, your cake will be heavy and oily. Alright, if you don't use enough eggs, then you won't get that lovely rise and also the sponge will fall apart. So you really do need to be careful on your measurements. Right, so at this point I'm just going to add in my vanilla essence. Alright, and like I said to you, I wanted to make this cake a little bit extra special because I'm going to put it up for raffle. So I am adding in white chocolate into this one, and what the white chocolate does is give that gorgeous nice sweet white chocolate flavouring to the cake. You can add fruit to your cake. So if you want white chocolate and raspberries, buy a bag of frozen raspberries. Don't be tempted to buy tins of raspberries because they are so full of moisture. All they'll do is make your cake really soggy. Don't be tempted to put too much fruit into your cake either. Just a nice smattering through them is enough, because that will also make your cake really heavy and stodgy if you put too much fruit in. You can, with the vanilla mix, you can add in any kind of flavouring, and you would add it at that point before you put your flour in. So you can do it orange, lemon, strawberry, whatever. And if you're going to colour your cake, you also need to add it at this point as well. Right, so I'm just going to stir up my chocolate because it needs to melt really well. White chocolate melts a lot quicker than any of the other chocolates, so You need to keep your eye on it so it doesn't burn. Just a couple more seconds in there. Yeah, if you want to make Dorset apple cake, you can add in cinnamon into your cake now, or ground mixed spices, and then if you where you're putting your batter in, do half your batter, a layer of apples, half your batter on top, and then sprinkle the top with either granulated or demerara sugar, and that gives you that lovely crusty top. Okay. Although you could make chocolate cake by adding in cocoa powder to this, I wouldn't. I mean, what you're supposed to do is take away some of the flour for the amount of cocoa powder you put in. So if you put in 50 grams of cocoa powder, you need to take out 50 grams of flour. However, I never make a chocolate cake this way. I use a totally different mix, and you've actually got the recipe for that and how to do it on my page, on my personal page and my business page, and also on YouTube. Okay, so I'm going to add in the chocolate. Make sure I get it all in there. And the flour. Now, everybody says to you, oh, sieve your flour. You don't really need to. Okay. All you need to do is turn your mix back on slow, and I mean slow, don't put it on too fast, and let it blend until it's all nice and smooth again. If you're using a hand mixer, just do it as slow as you can, or just fold your flour in with your spatula until it's really nice and smooth. Okay, so I'm just going to scrape down the sides of my mixer again. Off, so I'm making sure everything is blended in really well. Okay, so that is all good. Blend it until you can't see any more lumps, but don't be tempted to over blend it. Okay, if you mix it too much, then you run the risk of making your cake really dense. All right, but because I've been doing this for so long, I know exactly when to stop it and start it and so on. But okay, I'm just going to go around the edges and also right at the bottom of my mixer, just to make sure it is all blended in really well. And it smells so nice, because all I can smell is the white chocolate coming off of this. It smells gorgeous. Okay, I'm really happy with that. Get that out of the way. And then I'm going to divide it out into my 3 cake tins. Try and divide it as evenly as possible. You can see it's a really lovely creamy mix. You see that? So if yours is all heavy and stodgy and really thick, then you know that something's not quite right. And if it is really stodgy and thick, you're going to end up with the same kind of cake, stodgy and thick. All right, so oh gosh, I can really smell the white chocolate. Right, so scrape out your bowl as much as you can. So you can see that's the perfect amount for those 3 tins. So if you were doing just 2 tins, you would have had 200 grams of butter, 200 grams of what I'm talking about. Okay, so you can see that that's the perfect amount for each tin. With my 600 gram mix, just take a little out there. Right, so if you were only doing 2 8-inches, you would have 400 grams of butter, 400 grams of sugar, 4 large eggs, and 400 grams of self-raising flour. Okay, so that's all done. Alright, so just to, before you put them in the oven, give them a little tap. What that helps do, you might see 1 or 2 come to the top. It just gets rid of any large air bubbles. Oh, one thing I did forget completely was make sure that your cake tins are lined with greaseproof paper. You don't need to line the sides, but you definitely need to line the bottoms. It just makes your life a lot easier. You don't have to worry about them sticking to the bottom and not coming out of the tin. Okay, so they are now in the oven and will bake for about 30 minutes. And I will stick a wooden skewer into, well, it's actually a kebab stick, no, a chopstick. And I use a wooden one because I feel that if your cake isn't cooked, it clings to the wood better, so I know when it is perfectly cooked. It comes out clean. Alright, so that's your vanilla cake made. Right, need to apologise because I did say to you that once I took the cakes out of the oven I would show you how to take them out the tins, etc. But I had got the record button pressed like an idiot. Anyway, what I do is once the skewer comes out clean, I leave the cakes in the tins on the side for just 5 minutes, literally just 5 minutes, okay, just so they cool a little bit. And then I go around the edge of the tin with spatula. If you haven't got a spatula, then use palette knife, use a sharp knife, and then I wrap them in cling film straight away. What that does is it locks in all the moisture, okay, so all that steam that's coming out of the cakes, which is flavoured steam, it gets to stay in the cake. If you don't wrap them up with cling film, then all that lovely moisture evaporates and you're left with a slightly drier cake than you would normally. Then what I do is I pop them in the fridge, and they stay in there for 20 minutes to half an hour, so that they get really, really cool, okay, maybe a little bit longer, but just make sure that they are super cool. And what that does is it allows you to have a better working platform for when you're doing your buttercream filling and everything else. Okay, so I have my cake board. I've got a cake here. This is a coffee mocha cake. So it's got like a marbled swirl through it of coffee. I'm going to use that for demonstration purposes. So in here I have got coffee buttercream. What I did was I put 4 heaped teaspoons of instant coffee in a cup, 1 teaspoon of hot water, so the minimum amount of water you can get away with to melt the coffee granules, and then I mix it into the buttercream. But I do add in a couple of heaped tablespoons of icing sugar to counteract the liquid that you're putting in there. Otherwise it ends up really runny. So on here, on my cake board, I am going to put a splodge of buttercream and then my first cake. Okay, so these cakes are super cool, and they will, you see how lovely that looks. You see how nice that looks? So okay, so that's stuck to the board. Then I'm going to put my first layer of buttercream. Okay, so I like to put a really good amount of filling in mine. I don't like just the thin layer that you put in, you see on YouTube videos and that kind of thing a lot. And this is one of the reasons why I make sure that my cakes are really chilled. Okay, so if I was doing a vanilla cake, I would use my palette knife and make kind of like a middle well. Okay, so you can, there's a barrier there all the way around, and I would put jam in there. All right, but as I'm just doing a straightforward coffee cake, I'm just going to make sure it's as flat as possible. So if your cake's slightly uneven, use the buttercream, just sort of eyeball it, make your buttercream help you level out your cakes, although mine are pretty level, so it's not too bad. All right, so that layer on, just give it a little wiggle, have a look at it just to see that it's level. That's pretty good. Now, most people at home will just be doing the 2 layers. As you know, I always do 3. One, it makes a much nicer cake for anybody that's having one from me, and also it gives me a better base for decorating. So it's not a piddly cake, but for at home, if you had just those 2 levels, you could then just put a little bit of milk. Remember I said to you to make it useful for piping, you need to just add a cupful of milk, a capful from the milk container, into the buttercream to make it a little bit looser so you can pipe it. And you would do that if you were going to decorate the top of your cake. Right, so for me, and for today's purposes, all I want is buttercream filling. Okay, so that looks pretty much okay. The last bits. Okay. This one on top. Give it a little wiggle. Don't be tempted to press too hard, because you don't want your buttercream to come too far out to the edge. it's a common mistake that is made where people think, oh gosh, I need to make the buttercream go all the way to the edge. You don't. You need this gap here in it so that the chocolate ganache goes into those gaps and stops your cake from having bulges on those bits where you've put your buttercream, and has a nice solid wall, so that doesn't happen. You end up with a lovely straight finish on your ganache, no bulging on your finished cake, and it gives it a better structural integrity. Now there I had just a little bit too much buttercream out to the edge, so I'm just going to push that in using my finger going around, because it's just too close to the edge of the cake. Okay. Right. I noticed when I was watching back on the video from earlier that I am constantly cleaning. It is something that you'll see me do an awful lot. I'm constantly wiping everything down, cleaning everything off. I am fanatical about keeping where I'm working clean. Just makes life an awful lot easier, because then if you put something down, it's not going to pick up loads of bits. And it's just much neater and tidier. Okay, so that's our cake filled. Now I'm going to coat it in white chocolate ganache, because I want to show you with this cake a technique that I had on one of the Christmas cakes, which is stripes, which is a lot simpler to do than you actually think. So because I'm going to be putting buttercream over the chocolate ganache, I wanted it to be white, just to make sure that the background, if I get a little bit too close to the ganache, it doesn't show through brown where you have milk chocolate ganache. So to make chocolate ganache, the ratios are, for white chocolate, 3 times whatever liquid you're using. So I'm using single cream. Okay, in there, that's a 300 milliliter pot. So for that, I use 900 grams of white chocolate. If you're using milk chocolate, then you need 2 times. So you only need 600 grams to this 300 milliliter pot of cream. For dark chocolate, 1.5 times. And I can't be bothered to work that out right now, but anyway, was that 450 grams? Oh my god, 450 grams of dark chocolate. When I'm actually doing normal cakes and I'm not doing, white chocolate ganache finish, I use a mix of milk and dark chocolate. And because the roads in Bournemouth are just so awful, I tend to do a higher ratio. So for this pot, 300 milliliter pot of cream, I would do 600 grams of milk chocolate and 400 grams of dark chocolate, and that makes a really lovely milk chocolate ganache, which everybody who has my cakes loves, but it also makes a much firmer ganache without it being sort of too strong with a bit of dark chocolate. And it does help to stand up against the awful roads that we have here in Bournemouth. So I'm going to melt this. All right, so I'm going to put that in the microwave. A lot of people will say heat the cream up and then put your chocolate into that and let it melt into your heated cream. I do it the other way around, because I found constantly when I heated up the cream myself before and then put the chocolate in, it split, the chocolate ganache split. So it was because the cream was getting too hot, and it ends up breaking up the molecules in the chocolate so they don't bind together anymore, and you end up with it being split. If for some reason or other that happens to you whilst you're making your chocolate ganache, okay, there is a simple way of rescuing it. Okay, so all you have to do is, if your ganache is looking split and really fatty, get a couple of capfuls of milk and put it in, and then beat the hell out of it, all right, and it will bring it back together. If you think of, you know, the square Lego blocks that you can stack one on top of the other, little square ones. So molecules in chocolate are like those Legos stacked one on top of the other, they're bound together. What happens is, if you heat it up too much, heat the chocolate up too much, they break apart, so all those bits of Lego fall apart. And what you have to do is bring them back together. So the milk, the cold milk, helps bring them back together and stack them in a straight line again. And that is the easiest way to rescue chocolate ganache. You don't have to throw it away, because that would be such a waste. But, you know, there are things that you can do to bring it back. And remember what I said to you earlier on, chocolate ganache, sorry, white chocolate melts an awful lot quicker than milk or dark chocolate. Okay, so you need to really keep an eye on it. With chocolate ganache, you don't have to use cream. You can use milk if you want to. You can use double cream if you want to. You can use coffee, whatever you feel like using. If you want to have like a strawberry flavoured one, you can use milkshake. But the ratios are always the same. Okay, that's just about melted now. Okay, just a few seconds more, and I need to keep some of it to do a drip on my, like my cup my grandson did for me for Christmas. Isn't that sweet? Sorry. Right. Okay, so all of the chocolate is melted in there now. I'm really happy that that's all nice and smooth and melted. And then literally just pour all of that in. All right. And then mix. Right, so all of that is now blended with the cream, and you can see it's quite a liquidy, nice chocolate ganache. It really is quite runny at the moment. It needs to chill just a little bit more, otherwise it's not going to stick to the cake. Okay, so I've let the chocolate ganache set for a little bit, so it's a lot thicker now, and I'm going to start by putting it over the top of the cake. Okay, so nice big dollop on the top of the cake, and then spread it out so it goes down over the sides of the cake. You can tell it's not too runny because it's actually clinging to the cake. All right, so I'm going to level that off as much as possible, and then I'm going to start taking what's gone over the edge and putting it back on the cake. All right. Then nice big dollop on your palette knife. If you haven't got a palette knife, use a spatula. and I'm making sure that I'm pushing it into those grooves, not too hard, but you need to make sure that it fills in the gaps, because that's going to give you your nice solid foundation for your cake. Okay, when you cut into chocolate ganache, it has a little bit of resistance, but if you use a hot knife or a warm knife, it cuts through it really easily. So it doesn't go rock hard like chocolate does. You just keep working your way around the cake. Don't press too hard because you'll put your cake off balance. Okay. Just make sure that you filled in all those gaps. Okay. In there. Because my cake is fairly cool, the chocolate ganache sets quicker. Right. This is a scraper. I got this from B&Q actually. All right, and it has a metal blade and then plastic, so it's food grade. There's nothing there that can contaminate, and the blade doesn't go rusty. And then it has the flat piece here on the bottom, which you put on the board, literally just scrape around your cake, keeping it as straight as possible. Now this is going to push everything back onto the cake nicely. Use it at a slight angle. As you can see, I've got it a slight angle to the cake. I'm not out straight, I'm using it slightly at an angle so that I can push everything back onto the cake. All right, let me scrape that off. And then I'm just gently taking the ganache in from the edges just to flatten it out. Okay. All right, so that's the first thin coat. All right, so that's what we call the crumb coat. And all that does is seals in all the crumbs on the cake, gives you your nice base to work from. Okay, so if you were just going to do rose swirls on your cake, this is all you would need to do. You wouldn't need to do any more than this on your cake. But I need it to be a little thicker than this because I need it to have a really good structure to do my stripes on. All right, so I'm going to do a thicker coat, another coat, just so that you can't see any of those bits of cake. So again, just working around the cake, putting another layer on, quite gently. You don't have to be too harsh with it. So this is going to give it a nice thick coating, cover up all of the cake. The other thing that chocolate ganache does as well is it seals the cake completely, and that will seal in all the moisture, seal in all the freshness, and it will help keep your cake fresh for longer, so no air can get into the cake, and it just gives you lovely finish on your cake. Okay, so just need to take a bit of time. You can see I've got a gap there. Okay, that looks pretty decent. All right, and then just scrape around your cake again, the same as before. Just very gently going round. If you haven't got a Lazy Susan like I have, you can get rotating cake stands from the range, or you can always use a plate, turn it upside down, so like a tea plate. No, don't turn it upside down. Put your tea plate on your work surface and your cake on the top, so you've got a little bit of a gap between the work surface and your cake board, and you'll be able to turn the cake that way. It will make it much more difficult for you, but it will enable you to turn the cake around. Okay, so now I'm actually going to use this straight up. Okay, so I'm going to go one complete rotation around the cake. Nice and slow, nice and steady. And then take off what you don't want. And then this one, I'm just going to do it at an angle again. Give you that lovely smooth finish. Once again, taking the ganache from the edges, pulling it into the middle of the cake quite gently. I can see I've got a mound in the middle. I'm going to flatten that out a little. Bring that out to the edges. Right, so now you can see I've created a bit of a lip there. So then go back again with your scraper. You can see the ganache is setting quite quickly now. So again, just pulling it all in from the edges, nice and gently. Okay, I just need a little bit down here where there's a big gap. Now the chocolate ganache that I've got left in here, I'm going to use to make a drip on the finished cake. So I'm going to keep that bit, and that's why I've got this. Some of this to be able to do a drip. So I'm going to use that to mount it in the microwave in a little bit. And then what I've got left here, I'm just going to melt up again quickly because it's gone fairly solid. Just a couple of seconds. And that's melted that down quite nicely again, so literally a few seconds. And I'm just going to use that on here just to fill in any last little bits that I'm not happy with. Okay, use my scraper again. Go all the way round. And that gives you your beautiful smooth finish. And this is the bit that you want to take time with, because having a really nice smooth finish is paramount to having no dense bumps, wrinkles and air bubbles when you put fondant on it. So it's worth spending the time just making it really nice and smooth, making sure that there are no lumps and bumps. Not happy with that bit there. Okay, so when a cake maker says to you how much it costs for a cake, you know that the time and effort that it takes to do just the filling and the chocolate ganache is all part of it. Everybody thinks, oh yeah, it's easy, all you do is bake a cake, fill it, put a few bits of icing on it, and Bob's your uncle. Well, it's not the case. Okay, so just going to use my palette knife and just finish off that top edge. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. Right now, I'm going to be doing buttercream stripes on this cake, so I didn't really have to be so precise with this because the thick coat of buttercream I'm going to put on top of this would have covered up any imperfections that I've got in my ganache. But I wanted to show you, there you go, how to do the chocolate ganache and how to get it nice and smooth. Okay, so I'm happy with the chocolate ganache. I'm just going to clean off the board a little. All right, so now I need the buttercream. And I'm going to do pink stripes on this one. Okay, so you don't need a huge amount of buttercream. I'm going to be using pink as my stripe, and this is from Colour Splash. This is £2 $39 for a tube. You can get colours, prime colours, from any of the supermarkets, but literally all you can get is prime colours. So if you want to have something slightly different, then you need to buy it online, and you can get all of these things on either Amazon or eBay at not a huge cost. Alright, so nice bit of pink in there because I want to make it quite a nice vibrant pink so it stands out really well. Not too pink, but just mix that in. Okay, so we have pink buttercream, and you can see that's a really nice pink. Alright. The other thing you're going to need is a piping bag, and you can get piping bags from Poundland. They still do them. You can also buy a piping kit from a lot of the supermarkets, which comes with several nozzles, and I think they are reusable bags for a couple of pounds, and it's handy if you want to do buttercream icing on cupcakes later on as well, especially if you can do it with the kids. Okay, so that's all my icing in there. I'm going to shake it down. And what I've done is I have cut the end off the bag, so you can see that. So there's sort of 1.5 centimetres opening at the bottom of the nozzle where the nozzle would normally go. So I'm going to push all my buttercream down. Okay, so what you end up with is like that. Right, so I'm just going to leave that there for a second. Right, now that's still a little bit tacky, which is nice. Now you pile on buttercream. Okay, you need a really thick coating, about 1 centimetre deep. Don't be tempted to skimp on the buttercream on the outside, because you really do need it to be thick. If it's not thick enough, you end up with the stripes smearing. And I found that out because I did it myself. I thought I could get away with having less buttercream, and you can't. Okay, so I know it's an awful lot of buttercream, but to do this technique you do need as much as possible on there. Alright, apart from on the top, because you're not going to do a stripe on the top. Okay, so nice super thick coating on here, and this is where you do press it against the cake fairly firmly because you need it to stick. Okay. Obviously not all of this buttercream is going to stay on there because you're going to end up scraping some of it off, but just start off with a really nice thick base of it and you can't go wrong. So you can see I'm using a paddle motion with my palette knife, which helps to stick the buttercream to the cake. Okay, so I've got a pretty decent coating of buttercream around it now. And then we're going to go back to scraping some of it off because it is really, really thick, and it's too thick for what I need. Same again as with the chocolate ganache, at an angle, so I'm pushing the buttercream against the cake, but I am taking some of it off, okay? Right, I can see there. So it's not up to the top of the cake there, so I need to adjust that to make sure that it is. Right, now go around again at an angle. Alright, so you can see I've taken off a fair bit of the buttercream, but not so much that it's going to not be thick enough. Now I'm just going to do it gently this time because I don't want to take any more off. I just need to make sure that it's adhered to the cake. And then I can fill in any bits that aren't right. Go there. Bit more down there. Okay, and then I'm going to go around it again. Just gently pushing against the side of the cake. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Smooth off the top a bit. I'm not forgetting on this stripe cake I'm going to do a drip finish, so the top doesn't have to be completely smooth. But if I was doing this for without the drip on it, then I would make sure that the top was completely smooth. Okay. Right. Happy with that. Let's put that away. Right, so the next thing you're going to do is create your grooves for your stripes. Now, this tool, you can get it in a couple of days on eBay. It's called Cake Comb, all right? And it has two different size gaps, thick and thin, all right? And it's £1, I think £1.53 or something like that. And literally it came within 3 days of buying it. So you now need to put this into the cake. And can you see where the combs go in? All right, so you need it there. So the combs are all the way in and the icing is just on that bit there. And then you just go all the way around the cake, taking off the excess buttercream. Right, so you can already see the grooves appearing. Spray that off. Right, so just do that once more. This time I'm going to do it at a slight angle, okay? And we do it once more. Okay, so those grooves are perfect now. I'm happy with that. Scrape all that off. Don't forget to put the lid back on your buttercream as well, because it will start crusting straight away if you don't. Alright, so now I'm going to fill in those grooves. You don't need masses of buttercream to go in these, so you don't need it to spill out, you just need it to fill in those grooves. So just slowly go around, squeeze in as you go around. And just keep filling that in until you've got all the way around. Okay. And then the next one. Just keep squeezing. This is where you find out how strong your hands are. Just make sure that it is filling in those gaps. Right, and then there's this last one on the bottom, so do that as well. Okay, so that's pretty well filled in, just a little bit there. And then you need your bowl that you had your icing in originally, in your scraper, and then you are going to add an angle again slightly, just gently against the cake, and start scraping around. Until you go all the way around. Now you can already see the stripes developing. It's already starting to look really pretty. Okay, just going to wipe that off again. Okay, now you can see there are some places where there is a deep hole just there. Okay, and here as well, and on the bottom. So I'm just going to put a little bit more ice in, not too much, but just a little bit more. Don't do what I just did and put some on the cake, on the cream bit. Okay, that's okay. And then start again. All right. Pressing against the cake gently, and pulling all the way around at a slight angle. Now this is where your having a thick coat of buttercream comes into play, because it allows you to keep taking off buttercream without getting down to the chocolate ganache. So you can just keep taking off buttercream until you've got your really lovely smooth stripes with no gaps, and you're happy with them. And that's very nearly there. There's still that bit here. I'm hoping just one more will do it. Okay, so let's give this a go. Yeah, that's not too shoddy. Okay, so I've had a little bit of a tidy up, and I'm now going to do the chocolate drip on it. So I had a bit of white chocolate ganache which I kept aside, and I have it in here, which I've added a little bit of milk to it just to make it slightly more runny. All right, so I'm now going to pour that onto the cake and then push it off in certain places just to make it drip down the cake. Right, so you can see that happening. So I'm just pushing it out to the edge, a little bit at a time, and just letting it drip down the cake. I don't want a huge drip on this, I just want it to be a nice drip, okay? The nice thing about doing a chocolate drip is it's so random. No two cakes are ever going to be the same. So you can see that happening there. Push a bit out. So I'm going down a bit further. Just keep going all the way around the cake until you're happy. You can see I'm just pushing little bits at a time out, not too much, because otherwise it just creates really long ones. So if you want to create a long one, just push a bit more out. But if you don't, then just keep it to a small amount coming out. Last bit on here. Okay, so I am happy with that. And you can see the drip going all the way around. And also it gives you a nice base to stick any of your, okay. So that looks really cool. All right, so I've got the last of the pink buttercream that I used to do the stripes, and in this bag I have an open rose nozzle, quite a big one, but an open rose nozzle, and I'm going to use that to do some decorations on the top. That goes inside the nozzle. Okay, so I'm just going to pipe some swirls. Did that a little bit too close to the edge. Don't do it too close to the edge. Literally just piping some swirls. You see where I did that one too close to the edge, so it would go down over. What I'm actually going to do is take that off. Do that again. Okay, so I'm just piping. It's a good way to use up the pink icing. All right, so I have some mini meringues that I got a little while ago for another cake. So I'm going to use those. I'm just going to pile them randomly around. So I'm actually standing them on their side because they stick into the chocolate ganache really nicely. And some piled in the middle. Just play around with this to what you like, and then I'm going to stick a couple on the side of the cake. Just randomly anywhere that I feel like putting them. I'm going to put one there to cover up that pink that I did. I'm literally just placing them wherever I feel like around the cake. So I'm going to make this bit that I'm working on the front of the cake here now. Put one more there. Okay, and then I have some sprinkles as well. So I have little silver balls. I'm just going to chuck in there randomly. It's where you end up with balls all over the place. At Christmas I ended up for days trying to find all the ones that run away. Alright, actually, let's put a few more. Just going to make it look really bright and sparkly. and it sticks really well to the chocolate ganache. Oh crap. There we go. And then this is pink shimmer sugar. Okay, so I'm going to sprinkle some of that around as well. It's my worst nightmare because this stuff ends up going everywhere, and the first thing I have to do is clean up. Okay, this is edible glitter, and you only need a tiny little bit of this. A little goes a long way, and you can get this from online stores like Vanilla Valley. I wouldn't trust buying this from eBay or Amazon, because all too often it's Chinese companies or whatever, foreign companies, who pass off or try and pass off superfine glitter as edible glitter. Now, although to be honest, if you ate glitter, all it's going to do is go through you. It won't stay in your body. It will just literally go through you. But these are especially made from sugars which have been worked out at really high temperatures to make them shiny. Not as shiny as normal glitters, but fairly close. So I hope you've enjoyed watching the video. I hope you have enjoyed watching the different techniques that I've done, and also you can see that a lot of the videos that you see on YouTube and Instagram and that kind of thing, everything is super smooth, super sleek and clean and tidy, and all that kind of thing, and it is just not like that in real life. It's messy, okay? So doing any of it is messy, but you just have to keep tidying up after yourself, giving everything a quick wipe down to keep the mess to a minimum. But doing cakes, you make a mess, and it is not as simple and quick as it looks on Instagram and that kind of stuff. So I know the video's long, but it shows you every single step all of the way through, and if you have any questions at all, feel free to message me. I will answer any questions that you have, and if you need any help with any of it, I'll help you as much as I can, okay? So I hope you've enjoyed it all, and I'll be back soon with something new. Okay, thanks, bye.